Welcome back to Beyond All Reason, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at the Cortex and their vehicles. So we're going to get started here with just the Inzer. This is the counterpart to the Blitz, and it's very comparable. You can see down here it's got 38 to 97 damage. Now with laser weapons, what that means is that at the longest range, it'll be 48 damage, and at the closest range, it'll be 97 damage. Okay, so with your incisors, if you're going up against Blitz, you're going to want to make sure you are pushing them and like getting up right next to them to try to get as much damage as possible with them. So that's essentially what you want to do with almost all of your laser weapons, is that style of warfare where you're pushing to gain ground, because that's where you're going to have the most DPS per second. Next up, we got the Wolverine. This is comparable to the artillery of Armada. They're essentially the same thing. With all of the Cortex vehicles, though, the Armadas are just a little bit stronger and a little bit better. I'm going to be making another video on like the details. I'm not going super deep into the details. I'm more going into the use cases on this one. So just be looking for that in the future. Also, if you guys get value out of this video, definitely subscribe. We're a smaller channel here, so we're trying to grow, and the more value I give, the better. The more subscribers we have, the better. The more YouTube will push out this video to others, and the more the bar community will hopefully grow. So, definitely would appreciate that. All right, so the mobile artillery, as it says here, I think it says it, maybe not. It only says it for the Armada rocket bots, I think, actually. It's good for static defense, largely. Now, this is something I never realized. You can see this this zone of explosion. It's a little bit bigger than Armada's artillery. So I'm gonna be looking into that further when I do that other video on the differences between the Cortex artillery bot or artillery vehicle and Armada's artillery vehicle. But just right off the bat, I believe it's going to have a weaker DPS but a bigger explosion radius, which means it might be a little bit better at taking out groups of units versus only static defense. So we'll be looking into that further. Anyway, that's my instant reaction. And I don't know if it has a slightly lower range. It's pretty much comparable, though, from what I've seen on the battlefield. Alrighty, and then we got the Pounder. Now, this thing is actually a little bit better than the Janus in some ways. You can't use it quite the same. So this has a consistent rate of fire that's pretty aggressive. Also, look at that radius. The radius is rather large. I think the Janus's explosion radius is a little bit smaller. So it shoots one like every second or so, every second and a half, one shot. Now, the special thing about the Pounder is it is what you would call a riot tank. And Janus is also a riot tank. Now, what that means is when you have units moving towards you, if this tank hits them, then that would mean that they are stunned. They don't really reload or shoot when they're stunned, and they stop moving. So it's like a really good way to like slow down a push and do a decent amount of damage. So these things might be a little bit better than the Janus, in my opinion. I always struggle to take these out, even though I have their counterpart as Armada. So I would definitely incorporate these into your army. They are very strong units, but they also do come at a little bit of a higher cost with 220 metal. But it's definitely worth that cost. Next, we have the garpike. I believe, yeah, this is a normal. It's like a normal tank. It's just amphibious, 220 cost. So each garpike is worth 1 pounder, basically. Yeah, they're exactly the same. Now, look at the range, 305 versus 315. So with the pounder, you get a bit more range on your attack. And then the DPS is 77 on this. And the radius of the shot is like only one single location. Versus the pounder has 105 damage per second. And the radius is massive. So the garpike is very, very weak compared to any other like units on Cortex. The only time you would actually want to use it is for its amphibious mode. Okay, just keep that in mind. I need to get these over here too. The amphibious mode is going to be better for like. I've made a video on the Armada version of this, but yeah, you're going to want to basically find a map that has like an area of water that's rather significant, and then you can sneak the garpike through the edge of the map potentially, and then like hit a base or something. Or there's also maps that have water on the whole edge. So like this is the inner map, and then all of this is water. So what you would want to do with your garpike at that point is maybe build up a few of them here, and then take them underwater around the edge of the map, and then attack their eco position. Okay, that's really where you're gonna see the most value out of those. Aside from stuff like that, they're not gonna be worth building because they are quite expensive for very little actual value that you get. Alrighty, now we got the brute. This is the main brunt of your army. Oh, actually, interesting. I did not realize this, but the brute costs more than the pounder. I find that very interesting. The pounder has 1,400 health, and the brute has 2,000 health, and it costs more. So this is not your DPS in your army. This is more of your shield wall. The DPS is going to come mainly from your pounder. Then like raiding unit, you can go through and try to sneak through the front line with these and go off and destroy stuff like economy or bases. And then these are just going to hold your front line. This is going to take most of the hits. I believe it's a little bit faster than the pounder. Yep. So it has... it's going to be taking the hits first, which is what you want to have happen. So try to use it in that way, since it's not going to have quite as much damage. The range is also larger on the brute versus the pounder, which is not the same for Janus. On Armada, Janus is a significant difference, like larger range compared to the Armada tank. So very interesting, a little bit different units here, a little bit of a different quality as far as like better and worse at different things. So yeah, and then we got the Lasher. Obviously this is going to be very similar to the Whistler for Armada, and this is just going to be your anti-air for the T1. It's not, it's not a fantastic anti-air, but it can take out like scouts in one shot, fighters in a couple shot, bombers in a couple shot. And it can be good for like poking, but as you see, it's only 17 damage per second, and it moves really slow. The move speed is 42 compared to the tank, which is 73, and the pounder, which is 41. So that's about the same as the pounder. So like if you're going to make your army largely out of Lashers, you want to be very careful of things like incisors, because they have double your speed. So you're going to be shooting, running away from them, and they can gain that ground on you and just start killing you, wiping you out. So because these guys don't do that much damage. So just be careful of that. But they can be a great harassment. So try to use them for that, and always incorporate a couple of them into your army, especially if you're on your front line and you're starting to push forward. Then the air player will likely send wherever he is. He'll likely send air at you. So having a couple Lashers towards your front line will help defend a little bit against that air and at least cause some damage rather than just giving free damage away. All right, and now we got this rascal, the scout. You know, counterpart is the rover, and it's just a basic scouting unit. It has a great amount of vision, very weak gun. You can get some of these out on the field at the very beginning of the game and try to do some harassment to economy, or just a lot of people will just set them towards the middle of the map so that they can see how far the enemy has pushed up, and they just use it basically as a beacon. Those are both good ways to use those. And then towards the end game, you might want them to like not stop pushes, but distract and cause vision, similar to a tick spam. You can use them in that way as well. And then you got the normal construction vehicle, which has all of your access to your advanced, your T1 economy, and the exploiter, which is a little bit of a stronger metal extractor. It has just as much health as a pounder, and it does 160 damage per second when it's getting hit. So that could be nice, but it does cost a bit more than a normal metal extractor. It's 240 metal versus 50 metal. And obviously it will also take a bit longer to build. So you have to determine, am I going to get value out of this, or is it just going to be more valuable to spend my metal on my front line and then have my metal extractors cheap? That way I can, make more of them and get more metal faster. So that's one thing I would definitely, consider. If the map is widespread, like if this is a 1v1, I would be more tempted to build some of those laser metal extractors, the exploiter, just because at that point you have a lot of area to cover, and it's sort of like building a turret and a metal extractor all at once. So that could be nice. All right, and also, guys, we're going to be doing a video on the Cortex turrets. There's a lot of similarities to Armada, but there are some differences, so we're going to be running over some of those in the future. So keep your eye out for that. The Muskrat, that's the amphibious construction bot, going to be used on occasion on certain maps, not very frequently. But it does have the ability to build underwater things, such as metal extractors, storage, geothermal, and all sorts of stuff like that. And it can go into seaplanes, I believe, as well. Yep. And shipyards, whatever you end up needing. So this thing is going to be useful when you have like a little bit of land that you're starting on, and then most of the map is water. You could go through and still go vehicles, throw out some garpikes, and you can still have an impact on the map and transition into something else if you want to start vehicles for some reason. Or if there's like a land bridge, we'll change that. So everywhere except for here, and there's a land bridge to another area you want to get to, and so you can have vehicles all along here fighting. And you can have your amphibious going and taking water mexes everywhere on the map. That way you have a bit more metal control as well. So that would be ideal, somewhere to push your vehicles and actually fight with them, because that way you get the most value. Alrighty, guys, that is it for today. Definitely like the video if you enjoyed it. Share it with some friends who are getting into Beyond All Reason and want to test out the Cortex vehicles. And I hope this was helpful for you guys. Leave a comment, and I will see you guys on the battlefield.